not that. That.
CAC
I don't wanna
10-19.
try that.
Good?
No, not that.
Well, thank you.
No, this is actually, see, I'm not,
Hey, you're not on.
We have a
the
few
Wi-Fi.
new faces with us today, so I'd like to start off by, going over our introduction to go around the room quickly. Most of us know each other.
yeah, that's what I hit, it wasn't,
Again, there's some new people, so I'll
I've
start
gotta
off.
get connections.
Ryan Richards,
Ah.
I'm a partner with RG Architects. Been on the CAC for about 10 years or so, and at our
See, I'm
last
not-
meeting, it looks like I was voted in chairman for this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Bob. So with that, we'll go around the room.
Bob Taylor, partner principal of ADG Architecture.
Anthony Churro.
Ellis English, retired.
Jack Strauss, GFA International.
It should read it with this.
Shelley Spillmer, retired employee, school
Let me do a restart.
Pontiac Prospect County School District, and Rutherford School.
Scott Wolf, real estate broker.
Jackie Brown, commercial interior designer.
Darren Watkins, civil engineer, Thomas Marine Construction, and vice chair, been here for 6-7 years.
Yes, Art Castellano, one day I'd like to be retired.
That's it, now.
Thank you for that. And with that, we'll move on to public comment. Not seeing any members of the public here today, I believe we can move past that. And we go into the approval of the minutes of September 18th. Now, I understand some people weren't here and these minutes were emailed out previously, so hopefully you've had the time to peruse them at your own discretion. And if there's any comments to be made, bring them up now. If not, I'd like to see a motion for approval.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Scott Wolf and seconded by Tanya Profit to approve the minutes as is. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you for that. Board member discussion, just on time.
Sorry, I guess there's another one. Yeah, so we can all see our own.
So we know.
He went to the bathroom.
So we just hit your, Mr. Giovanelli, we just hit your point on the agenda. We'd like to get you settled. We'll jump in and come back for a minute. Or
Yeah,
would you like to
yeah,
just run
please.
right into it?
Until the other gentleman gets here. Yeah, that would be great. Do you mind? You just wait, come back around to me?
All right. What we had next on the agenda was the subjects for future meetings. Normally the first meeting or two is kind of hopes and dreams, what you'd like to see the committee look into or help the district with. Clearly, we're here at their behest to help them with what they may see, but I'd open up for the members of the committee themselves, if they have anything,
Yeah.
any burning desires that they'd like to see brought to the table, then we can address that as well.
Would this be the place to bring up about bringing more field or in trade experience into the high schools? Let's say,
Yep.
bring up, bring into teaching, getting back to the trade aspect. Not everybody should go to college, and understanding why it's important to perform a trade.
Is that in reference to reopening vocational training in the schools?
Yes.
From auto mechanics to construction, electricity, plumbing,
I would
HVAC?
I would believe that every high school somewhere should be able to fit in a different trade somewhere in that aspect. In other words, not keep all construction under one high school, have another high school, it might be, could do automotive and stuff like that, yes, sir.
And there probably, whatever you do, the academy, those sorts have to be set up by zone. Because if you're limited to the east zone, south zone, you kind of have to have one in each.
That also would be brought up with the academic committee too.
Yes.
Because they're the ones that set what schools teach what.
Well, the other option is, a vocational center that is essentially zoneless. I don't know how to.
When I went to
that's
high
something
school,
for the staff.
in Ohio, they had, it was vocational. But you would go to the last 2 years of high school, to junior, senior year,
Thank you.
and then there was a slate of different vocations, like cosmetology to auto body mechanics. Computers were maybe coming in, maybe, different things like that, and there were, a couple of magnet, I guess, type schools, so there weren't very many. So it did involve some additional travel, but probably as something, it was well attended, it died out as college became the thing to do, but with the cost of that going up and trade being needed, probably is a good future plan.
And there's the Lee County VOTEC Center. I'm not all that familiar with their programs or the services there.
Yeah, it's called Fort Myers Technical College now, but it was Levo Tech when I was young.
Where's that located?
On like Michigan Avenue.
Yeah.
That's like down Fort Myers? The school district runs that, correct?
Correct.
Right through the Lee County
Correct.
School District.
And Cape Coral. Cape
Right.
Coral is great.
There's a Cape Coral one's a newer one, I
The
think.
biggest problem we have on
So
both.
basically you wanted to do, is just high school everywhere?
Yeah.
Are you targeting a high school students or?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you have to go through curriculum, you have to have a plan, with my understanding, that there's a process for that. Not only, you should probably take a year or two.
To set it up.
down. Yeah, to
Oh, at
set it
least.
up.
It only took 6 months to shut it down.
This is true.
This is the only county I've ever been in where they didn't have vocational training. At a school, at the school. Not all kids are, A+ geniuses. I got a couple, I know.
Well,
But they've always been some type of vocational training. What they offered last year at our particular school, it closed because it was a total failure. They stuck in the IB program and dual enrollment, which is great, but not every student is in there either.
which school is that?
Bucking, Riverdale.
Riverdale. Because I know that they're wanting to bring the trades back into the school because we are hearing a lot that, we can't find carpenters, we can't find plumbers, we can't find electricians. So,
It's not that, it's the waste of education that's taking place because these kids are in their prime learning stage now. And that's what's being taken away from them. When we robbed as people, robbed them of the vocational training, we took that away from these kids. They're the ones that are suffering, not us. You can say, I need electricians and plumbers, well, I'll go get you all you want. But the idea of it is you need to try to keep that at a local level, especially all the talent we have. Riverdale has what, 2,700 students there?
I don't think it's that large.
Yeah,
But still, it's a large school.
yes.
Yeah, it's
The second
like-
So
biggest in the
education is cyclical, so became technical, everything technical, and I totally hear you and I totally agree with you that we need to try to bring it back, but we are. I mean,
Well, actually, the governor's even doing it,
Yeah.
and they're doing it in Congress. I mean, it's federal end, because they want the trades back in.
Sure.
So it all has to do with the funding source, and
I
they shifted,
told
but
that,
now
yeah.
that we need to shift some back, So, but I think,
Well, what I was gonna point out was the hardest focus on students that I deal with up there is transportation. Both working parents, they don't have the opportunity to go to vocational school. I think one of the people working at the school live right not too far from me, like half a block. His biggest crux is trying to get students over there, and the transportation's an issue.
to the Fort Myers Technical College, okay.
Because on our way, there's really not that much out there for those kids in that way, except for sports and IB program.
I mean, when you change the name to technical college, it's technically after high school, right? It's postgraduate for them, so
Yeah,
it takes it out of that high school realm altogether.
Sure.
but even like shop is not in schools anymore.
No.
Home economics is not, so it's not just trades too,
Well, when you say vocation, I mean, it's like a big umbrella.
but Benita Springs High School has.
They have the HVAC, yes.
Yeah, Benita Springs High School.
Nursing.
And don't they have auto body out at Eastleigh?
I was gonna say Eastleigh County.
Eastleigh
they do
still
have a-
has.
Some
And South was
They
supposed
have
to have it.
the nursing program
Yeah,
and you
thank
do have the mechanic program.
And South, I think, has. And then the pilot.
I don't know. But speaking of transportation, I do know the FMIT, they do sometime, like if the students will walk in, they say they don't have transportation, usually give them a letter so they can get a discount to get this bus.
That's true, but
So,
a lot of
Lead train
it's a
is-
process,
is-
yeah, lead train, yeah.
That's.
I mean, it's better than nothing, that's at least a step, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, when I used to live out there, I kind of figured out like, if I had to take the bus to school every day, I wouldn't get there till 2 in the afternoon. I'd be sitting at the bus stop at 6 in the morning, and I would not get to where I was going till 2 in the afternoon.
Well, my next question would be, can it be looked into if the federal government is mandating vocational training back into the system? Is there monies available for that?
That's part of it. No, I mean, they've got to give more money. I mean, so that's, you know, it's limited. And it has to be, the district has to also work with that. You know, they have to plan
In space, I mean,
and, yeah.
I'm not talking about like right now handing a check over, I'm
No,
just
no,
saying,
I think we're all on the same page. It's just now it's
the
implemented.
burden won't be strictly
What's
on
that
the
look
county,
like?
right?
Right. Oh, no.
Okay, just asking.
No.
I mean, a lot of these spaces were in schools at one point in time, what have they become?
They're out of date now, according to any school that had that function 5 years or longer is out of EPA standards. It's all gonna have to be updated, redone, someone's gotta pay for that. Just to tool one up is what, a couple $100,000? It's not just meant buying hammers and a couple nails.
Right.
Draw.
So I know that we're working on it, but it's not there yet.
I'm just curious.
All right, on subjects for future meetings, I think towards April or May, we should go do a field trip to the high school site, if we can. MMM, like April, because I know they're starting now, so they should be, foundation should be in by then.
Mhm.
Close to having the foundations in and stuff like that.
Correct.
But we have to probably schedule that towards the end of the, very end.
Absolutely, we can do that.
Cars and stuff.
Pardon me?
Can you park cars?
No, what we do is, we meet everybody here, we get transportation to provide a school bus, and we all get to ride the school bus.
I was told we don't do that anymore.
Oh, well, that's the way we used to do it,
I
but
know.
evidently,
Liability.
well, there'll be parking there
Last
for
time I went
cars.
to Benito, it was just everybody meeting.
Yeah, everybody
There
just
was
drove
discussions.
And we can do that too.
But
There'll be
then
parking area.
if we have to have it, announced and then it's open to the public, is that a bad time to be there or not a bad time to be there construction wise? Like if other people would wanna come? Like what would be the least bad?
I guess we're gonna have to cross that bridge when we come there. We're
Okay.
gonna have to provide release of, not liens, hold harmless agreements for anybody that comes on site, and that would, obviously, you guys would sign one of those papers.
Right.
The safety is on the Suffolk contract, and there will be parking, the job trailers out there, so we could hold the meeting in the front, and then if there was to be a field walk to walk out, we could follow it later. I don't see, we've done that before, I don't see that being a problem.
Do that sometime in the end of our construction meeting year, which is in May, is our last meeting.
So nice and dusty and when we done.
Yep.
So, part of this committee, I think we need to put in discussions that we've talked about in the past, that some of the new members here probably get, heads up on. To me, I think is, purchasing requirements, construction purchasing requirements. Update on projects, which, Scott gives us. An update on construction standards, Scott, what you're doing currently, so we're all aware of how you're building schools and what goes into it, the cost of construction and stuff. Someone can help us with that. And then, future planning, which would be the planning department would need input from the planning department on what they got planned for the next 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years.
RFP process is a scoring system for that too.
Yeah, that's purchasing requirements, because I think there was a letter sent out last meeting.
For the PSSW one,
So you'd like a presentation from the RFQ process people? I know we had one last year, didn't
I'd
we?
like to revisit that, yeah.
Can I chime in on that? This is something I was gonna bring up too, is that about 3-4 years ago, the purchasing designed a process with public input. A lot of us were there. They've had, over the last couple of years, a chance to test it with various RFQs, whether they're architects, engineering, or contractors. And through that process, from my personal opinion, it's demonstrated there's some flaws in the way the process is working. I personally raised my concerns with purchasing. They listened to me, but nothing's happened since then. And we can have a presentation, but that's not really what I would like to see. I would like to actually get them to do a review of how this thing works and with public input, of course, and go from there, because I believe there's some flaws in the way it's working right now. I can get into deeper detail if you want, but that's.
And I've been hearing that a lot. I brought that up last year. And I agree with you. I'd like to see more of the detail, because I don't think that I know enough about it to understand the whole process. So I think I agree with you. And I think that's what this letter is trying to, that we were gonna talk about. And I don't know if everybody got a copy of it, but I think this letter is about what you're talking about,
That's
basically.
part of it, yes.
So I mean, that, and that was the architect letter from BSSW. And so that was really part of my speaking, gonna speak about, is just, so I think what you're asking for would answer these, help with that. And I don't know, we can talk about it more then at the time of getting the review. You know what I mean? And people can talk about it if they would like, but I think that would help with that.
Can I ask a question? Outside of that letter, how is, you talking about purchasing for construction only?
Procurement.
Procurement for the school?
This would be for design service,
Can I ask
construction
ahead?
management
I'm not that
service.
familiar with your purchasing system. Can you explain, just run me through how it works real quick?
Well, in a general, anything over $2 million
Got it.
has to have a RFQ process, request for a quote,
Got it.
request for qualification, sorry. And what ends up happens, we put a public advertisement out.
Sure.
Vendors come, they provide books. They're given specific dates where they can provide their corporate books. They answer a list of questions that were in the advertisement. That's what makes the books up.
Sure.
They submit them. They go to a scoring committee made up of many different divisions and people throughout the district. They score the books and they rank them.
Sure.
The ranking goes to the school board for approval of the ranking. And then, of course, we engage in negotiations, whether it be for architects, construction managers, or building official firms.
Okay.
Well, that's usually shortlisted, I think you kind of.
Well, then you do a presentation. That is the
They would pick the
physical.
top 3 or 4 firms and then
Have
bring
them
them
come in
in
and
for
do
an
a
interview and a presentation.
Correct.
There's preference to small business community efforts or?
No,
None.
there's no preferences, local or anything.
And that's part of what this letter, I think, is trying to,
Well, I was talking outside the letter.
but I think that was really their only, their main.
Yeah, and a few years it was done under the facilities umbrella by the guys in the construction department that dealt with this on a day-to-day basis. It's since been moved to procurement, which architecture, design and engineering services are not buying a stack of books or box of toilet paper. It's completely different, but it's kind of being done by the same people. And I think that's some of the frustrations that you see there as well.
And what happens under 2 million?
Under $2 million, we have what we call a continuing contracts process. It's a 3-year contract. We have contracts for $200,000 to 0 and $200,000 to $2 million. That's a lot of it was your corporate financials, what you're able to get bonding for and so forth in those projects. That's open again, publicly advertised in an RFQ. The vendors come in, they submit their books. The books are scored. The companies are shortlisted, but in most cases on the continuing contracts, they pretty much take the bulk of the submitters.
Right.
So we have a good stable of vendors.
Okay.
Then, of course, it goes to the board. Then we schedule presentations, and you start back at 0, and that's when you fight for your contracts.
Businesses can come in from 0 to 200 because they don't have the bond.
I got you.
On the construction side, it makes sense with bonding, but even on the design side, they'll end up taking 7 or 8 firms and then
Correct.
kind of rotate through the list,
Oh, okay.
handing out
Yeah.
smaller jobs.
That's correct. We have a rotation schedule, so whoever is number 1 based on the board-approved ranking, once they submit their books and their
And that
scores
can
so
run up
far.
to how much on one job
Pardon?
ticket? How much can that run up to on one job?
Well, it's gonna be anywhere from 0 to 200,000 if you're in that group.
Right.
It could be 200,000 to 2 million if you're in that group, or you could qualify for both groups and have a ranking for both of those.
What Scott is saying is
No, I got that.
0 to 200, and once you're at 200, if you pick a company you can't bond,
Right.
they're out. You can't go over 200 because you publicly have to bond after it's 200,000.
Okay. I got it now.
So you have to go.
Yeah, those are
back to
construction
some-
numbers, not design numbers.
Oh, no. I got
You
it.
get a lot out of an architect with 2 million, let me tell you.
I'd like to see that.
John and I can still wait for it.
We got 3 architects already.
Well, if we keep hiring out of area people, their travel expenses.
But we try to be competitive, and that's the ranking that the board approves is important, because we try to rotate through that numerically, so there is no perception of favoritism or.
I got that. Okay.
All right, other ideas for meetings or items that people would like to see discussed this year?
I have one. Actually, so I toured a couple times Fort Myers Middle, and they have a lunchroom that's probably the size of this room, maybe twice, that's it. And it's a rather large school, the lunchroom is very small, it needs to be renovated. They're asked to be on the list, I don't know if there's actually a facilities list, so I think that's a start. And I think that, and there might be other schools that have smaller lunchrooms that I don't know about, but I know that's one in particular. It has opportunity, I think, that could be somewhat remodeled. There's off to one side is a, kind of like an area that they don't even use for, like if they had basketball, it's right by the gym, and there's an open area that they can move. Like it's almost like a concession stand, but it's not. I mean, they're not using it as that they might be able to utilize. It's a little bit of space. I don't know. I'm not an expert on construction, so that's what you guys are. So I thought if it's something that you could look at, I mentioned it to him at the last meeting, didn't I, Scott?
I was going to give you an update here in a minute.
Oh, awesome. So I told him to put it on his list, but I mean, I think it's something that you would have to travel and see that, it come back as a recommendation. And I'm sure there's other schools, so he may be able to work on that list. But that was what I had is what Myers Middle needs.
Is there a history of expansion there and it kind of got left behind?
We just met every year at about this time. We begin what we call our federal food service programs where we do kitchen work, serving lines, refreshing the kitchens. We literally just met yesterday.
Oh.
And Fort Myers Middle was one of the schools that came up. They would like a specific wall knocked down in there, which we said it could be done. They want a new serving line installed, which is, part of that. So we are now, Jim Hill and Lauren Kakus, who is the director of food service, and myself and Kathy, we all met. We're starting to create that summer projects list for summer of 2020. That's when we get in and we do our guts and fix-ups. And that will be on that program.
Oh, okay.
That particular school, plus several others, depending on how much funding that they have for their spend down in the federal program with food service.
Okay.
That dictates how many of the jobs, once we add up what the anticipated values are, that we can release for the summer work. And what that happens is, some of the jobs may be under 200,000. We use what we call the LT, continuing contracts, less than 200,000. Some of them may be over 200,000, and many of the people here are involved in that. The bigger kitchens, servery lines, and cookware and so forth. So those will get divvied up, and we go through the rotation, who's next on the continuing contract list, and we start again at the top with more jobs. So we just started that yesterday. We had the meetings, we met. Usually we have the schools picked out by the beginning of January and associated cost values by January.
Okay.
And that's when we come to the superintendent with the contracts for each school program in preparation for a start as soon as school lets out in the spring.
So it's not anything at this point in time that the construction advisory could get involved, or they don't need to, or what's that?
What I can bring back to you is, I'm gonna show you some projects we've just gotten recently that we're gonna be engaging with. When we have the kitchen projects list prepared, we can come and present to you what schools we're gonna do, what kitchen work, what food service has recommended we do at those schools, and we can vet that with you guys if you like.
So, and this leads me to a question. So do we not actually have a facilities plan where all the schools have been assessed and what needs what? I mean, we've got this tax money, and that's what I thought it was gonna be designated for. And so I mean, even if it's 2020 and 21, 22, 23, whatever, a project plan.
We do
prioritized?
We do have a facilities list for all things school-based. Blinds, carpets, roof, HVAC equipment, furniture, and so forth. There is that list. Plus you have the ISOC committee for the tax referendum, what was supposed to happen at each school site, what's anticipated to happen over the course of that referendum. What happens with food services, they have a pot of money that if they don't spend it down to zero, it goes back to the federal government. So that's where we see how much that is. What schools need a newer refresh? It doesn't mean the kitchens are outdated.
No.
But if we can get a new kitchen serving line with modern technology and cooking hoods, maybe they're 10, 15 years old and it's time and that money's there. Food service prioritizes, because they're the expert in the food delivery for the students, where their needs are, and we spend down on that money with the projects based on their recommendations.
That's funded from the kitchen department, it's not funded
Right.
from the sales tax.
Right.
That is correct.
That's what you just said.
It may be worth looking into something that, you know, kind of combines the capital outlay, because the kitchen will fix kitchen stuff all the time, but I'm not sure they're looking to double the size of the dining room. It's
Well-
not really their purview
well-
necessarily.
Yeah, how does that fall under that?
Well, there's two different ways there. There's various ways you can spend money out of the food service project. At Lehigh, we did outside dining, and they were able to fund that because it's seating capacity. They didn't have enough internal seating inside the high school, so we created an outdoor dining area. And potentially at this school, if there's an area, and I'm not familiar, so I apologize, but if there's an area where we can go outside and create in a outdoor dining area under cover with benches, have security and fencing so that it's connected to the cafeteria, that's certainly something we could do, and I think we could utilize those funds. If not, if there definitely is, because of growth at that particular school, a need for that expansion, then yes, we would attack the capital funds. And that would be something that's brought forward by Kathy Ebaugh, the executive director, planning. There's this new CIP program, which is going to inject all the various projects that need to come forward and what year funding they'll come forward in. So that's all coming. We're just not there yet, but
Does Fort Myers Middle have any newer additions, or is it still kind of the original campus?
Original campus.
So it was just always that way?
Yeah, they recently had their gym redone, new flooring and stuff like that, and painted and stuff. And that was a couple of years ago, I think.
They had some really bad brick problems too, didn't they?
She didn't point that out, so I don't really know. I just know that, she wants to knock a wall out and there's space, that concession area, and expand it as much as you can. And then there's an open area right outside of that. That part of it is already, it's walled up right there, I believe. And I don't know how much space it is, but it's right by the gym. And so.
so that would be all part of that project.
Yeah, so they could do both, it's really enlarge it. Her concern is that you have all these students very closely confined, that it's just, could be a problem. You know, food fight would be real fast in there. Somebody just has to yell at once. They're all so close, so.
All right. So, yeah, we can take a look at that and we'll follow up with on your end on that.
May I make one suggestion on the discussion for the RFQ presentation, that we could certainly bring procurement in here to give a history of that and area concerns? It's probably gonna take a full meeting, so whatever you guys plan, just plan on, that's basically gonna take up that whole hour.
From what I understand, we probably want them to take up half the meeting so they can do as much listening as they do talking.
Point.
Going back to that, the only other thing was, you mentioned earlier that you were involved with the sales tax. Should the CAC get to see, what projects are being proposed? Mainly from the maintenance standpoint, the new projects, everybody understands that, but as they push the sales tax, I think there was a big push that, hey, a lot of this money's gonna be used on maintenance projects. I know they're doing a bunch of re-roofs. What are we doing?
If you go to the theschools.net, the website, and I can show you that link. I'm not really involved with it, I just happened to be at the meeting, I got invited to come check out what's going on over there. So I just sat in the crowd, and the update, it's pretty amazing that you can go through every school and see what's being done, how much is being spent, when it's being spent. You can tell what it's being spent on unless it's security related, because that's also good. But if it doesn't fall into that category, then that's a pretty good accounting on the website.
Correct. I think if you click on the halfpenny, go to leeschools.net, click on the halfpenny, it brings you to a dashboard. The dashboard, you can pick the schools you are, and it has a program. And maintenance just provided the latest quarterly report into the ISOC committee. It was a whole portfolio of what projects are going on with associated before and after completion photos. So if possible, we'll try to see if we can get an electronic version. It should be public information.
That would be great.
That can be emailed to all of you. I don't know, I'm gonna assume it's pretty large if there's a lot of
Yeah.
I'm
pictures.
not sure, emailed.
But if they send a PDF, maybe it's something that could go, but.
Oh, and one other thing that we could just kind of keep the committee abreast on in general is those meeting dates. I know they're announced, but unless you're out there actively looking for it, it'd be good to go see the quarterly report and, have your questions answered on a regular basis. Just pop in on one of those meetings. and see what they're doing. So it was pretty interesting, you know, it was the first one I've gone to, but, you know, it's good to see.
We also need to be updated with Cypress Middle and,
Franklin
Franklin Park.
Right, they just had, 2 weeks now, the state came down, they sent a representative. Kathy Ebo and Dominic, the long-range planner, met with them, as well as the principal. They walked that representative through both campus sites. We've asked the architects that had done the original Castaldi. It was his recommendation that we provide some additional information to support the need, which they're in the process of doing that, and that will be submitted up to the state. And they thought that we would have an answer on the 2 schools by Christmas time, by December. So that was a pretty positive thing, basically a 3 months turnaround. So we'll know then, but Kathy seems to be very positive, and that we're hopeful for a full razzing, and that the information we're providing will support that as such.
For both schools?
For both schools. So,
We were kind of glum about that.
well, I'm just telling you that their initiative, it still has to go to a committee, but we had some direction from the individual that came down that might help support what our long-range goal is as a district, and it seemed positive, so we're just gotta wait it out and see what happens.
And those are funded from the state though.
No, no, Castaldi's funded through the district's capital and/or the tax referendum funds.
There's no real state construction funding anymore, all that, it's all for maintenance projects. Very little construction funding from the state. Everything's local tax base.
Then why are we waiting on, or why do we have to have the state involved?
You have
We're gonna
to,
do it ourselves.
Well, it's still
Well, but-
allowed to tell you how to
They have
start.
to, you have to approve the project.
yeah, by statute, they call it a spot survey and so forth.
Tell us to tear it down, but you're not gonna give us any money to tear it down.
Now you know.
It's like you have the money, but you have to ask for money. And then they make you build things in the building that are inadequate for the use.
I don't get to ask,
I know.
it just happens.
Like the SREF, you have to follow the SREF guidelines. Because
Correct.
like one of the questions I had, I went to the new school at Babcock, and their flooring was all just polished cement, beautiful. And so I come back and I tell everybody about how beautiful it was, and they said, oh, we can't do that. I'm like, what do you mean? You know, I would think it would be saving money, and the floor is beautiful, you know, it'd be easy to clean. I would think they just, you know, be, and they said, nope, we have to follow SREF guidelines and you can't do that. I'm like, okay. So I was very upset.
It's not a public.
I wanted to do that in Cypress, but we couldn't do it. Flooring in Cypress.
How did Charter County get to do it?
It's a charter school,
It's a charter school.
that's why,
The charter schools
They
don't
don't
follow
follow.
SRAF. They're not required by statute.
That's why they could go to charter school cheaper than we could go to public school.
Yeah, and things like bathrooms in every classroom that has kids up to grade 3 or whatever. You know, there's a list of things that just kind of add up. All right, any others before we move on to board member discussion?
I think I pretty much said what I wanted to say.
Well, we kind of glanced around your letter for a while. I know you're dying there.
Well, I squeezed it in. I don't know if everyone had a chance to read it, but I think he really touched on it, adding it to the review. I think that's the best process, in my opinion, and I think to delve into it more after we hear the RFQ process, that would help shed light on the letter more, in my opinion, but somebody else may want to have more topic, but that's all I have, because I brought up the couple things that I had already, you know, so.
The only thing on the letter, and Bob was touched on it, there's a bunch of different people at those 2 meetings they had. But that letter's basically, you know, stating that they're a local firm and the other company wasn't.
Right.
But keep in mind that procurement set that up that way. And I think it was, I don't know how many people were at that meeting, but it was heavily discussed. And it was told that everybody in that room that was state statute. even though other counties are not following that. They do have a restriction on where you can come from. But they limited it then to 200 miles, which from the state statute, why would you put 200 miles on that? So procurement is the one who put this in. And, you could go through the RFQ all you want, but unless the statute changed and it was Susan Malay's putting the meeting on, then, they were asked to provide the statute, they never did. And you're never gonna get the local participate, you're not gonna get the local subcontractor, contractors / architects, engineers, whoever gets picked on that continuously. You're getting them, but, it's the hit and miss. So you have people with a storefront, they might have somebody in that room, but maybe not. You've had people get jobs that have virtual offices, right? You just pay for that online. So it's, it's a problem. Yeah, it should be local participation mainly, or it should count for something.
Or you get extra scoring, your points or whatever.
Right. It should just, it should count for something for the people who are here. But it doesn't, and it hasn't since the since procurement took over the RFQ process.
So then, am I hearing you say that we need to see the statute, this committee needs to see the statute, and then make a recommendation back to procurement? I think it's what, you'll have a conversation and make recommendations back.
Yeah, if it's required though by statute, then the next question would be, well, how the other public entities getting around it?
But it's not around it, it's there for a reason.
I know it's there for a reason.
The reason being is, you know where Dade City is?
Yeah, I know what Dade City is.
If I went to a local, it used to be 50 miles, 40 years ago it was 100 miles, I think it was. In Dade City, where do I find an architectural firm that qualifies for a bonded job? I can't, so I have to open my envelope.
Yeah, but that's up to Dade City.
No, let me finish. In order to make it fair, you can't discriminate. I mean, if you're dealing with public money, the state gets involved, state requirements, state regulations. And what happens is you have to follow their guidelines. When they say you have to open that window to 200 miles, it didn't say into Georgia.
Do you know it says 200 miles?
Yeah, I do. And what it said, what the reason for that was, is to stop bigger firms from coming in the state and taking over our local work.
Okay, but
If you took that requirement out of there, what happens? I got firms in Atlanta, Virginia.
no, I'm not saying take that,
Yeah,
you're missing the point.
Yeah, it's the other way around.
Maybe I missed it.
Limit it to 50 miles instead of 200 miles.
Yeah.
And it's always, it's been for as long as I've been doing work for the district since '91.
Okay.
It's always been basically in there that there was a limit. Used to be Lee County would get, anybody in Lee County would get.
Sure.
And then it, it spread its wings a little bit, which is fine, it's fair. But now it's wide open.
Yeah.
So the local people who do everything around here were involved or, participate and help out and stuff for the school board are kind of being, not shunned, I don't want to say that, but,
Look at hard.
they might be second on the thing, and some guy from 200 miles away could be from almost Dade City.
And the vehicle that defeats that is they can get a Lee County tax certificate and open up a shop here and may have nobody in it or just a person answering a phone.
I just dealt with someone.
And that kind
comes
of,
back to the RFQ process, right?
correct.
And that is, again, we've all seen the games played, but that's again up to the school district. I mean, for years you had the litigation, you had everything in those RFQs, and that's something we talk about with the people that come in here for procurement.
I understand what you're saying, we can talk about this, but the problem here mostly deals with phase 2 of the presentation, which is the dog and pony show that everybody does to the presenters. And there's no, the weighting, the 25% weighting is for present your team, what they're doing and how they're doing it. And maybe we can break that off into a 15-10%, where 10% can be tell us who's gonna be working on this project and who is local. Because the people that are coming from Tampa or Orlando or Miami that aren't gonna be working on these jobs, they can't say, well, we're here in Fort Myers, we're here in Lee County, or we're here in Collier County. So I think maybe the answer is to get the second presentation, part 2 of it, split that up into a question where we can say, you got 100%, you get 10 points, you got 80%, you get 8 points,
But to me, if you're good enough to get to the table to do the presentation and you're not local, then, the people who've
But that
chosen
was,
you've
that was the issue with this selection. It was 0.03 off the first and the second team, 0.03 points.
No, I know that.
There was no location The location was in part one.
I know,
not
but
part
why,
two.
I guess what I'm saying is, why bring them,
Hand it off.
why let them get in? I'm okay with them getting in if they got in based on the low point.
Well, you have to let them in, because maybe it's a 50-mile requirement, or if they have an office, you have to let them in.
All I'm saying is, I didn't say let them, I mean, get them to a short list. If there's a scoring process and whoever the committee is still picks that firm, then so be it. They had that in the presentations as well for contractors, and a contractor to get around it, he had no office here. It wasn't too long ago, and what he did is and just like that, teamed up with a local guy.
May I inject one suggestion? Because this is cyclical, and this occurred many years ago. And what they did is they brought our local construction partners, design partners, and building official partners in. They brought them into the boardroom. And what they did is they had, for lack of a better term, a giant round table. And they had voting clickers that each person that attended this meeting, and they presented possible changes to the RFQ process, what was good, what was bad, and they had all of the community participants, the vendors, vote on the various changes, what needed to be changed, and the outcome of that was a revised RFQ process, which they said they had the local participation from people guiding them in how those formulas are created, distances and so forth, things that can be adjusted. So maybe that is a recommendation you guys want to make, that you want to have that public, it's been a few years, maybe it's time for another one of those public forums where they do that.
That's what I've been suggesting, is that we've had a chance to test their system. And from my point of view, maybe others, I see flaws in the system that bring up problems like the VSSW letter. This is a symptom of a bigger problem that we have. And like John, I've been working with the district since the 90s, and I've seen good times come and go. Our companies, the small companies here that support the district in the good times and the bad times, we were working with them, supporting them, making a living, doing what we do. And then get to 2004, 2005, district goes into a very aggressive building program. All of a sudden, what I'll call the big box firms come from somewhere else. I'm talking about construction and architects, and they push out the local guys. So if you don't partner with them, you're out. So they came in, they took all the projects. We hit 2008, the economy nosedived. Guess what? We're still here supporting the district, looking for work. These guys, they're gone. They left the district. They left district high and dry in some instances. And so now the good times are back. It's been about 10 years. And guess what? The guys that were local, we're not doing anything. Maybe a couple of firms have got a couple of nice projects. But you look at the qualifying credentials, they say, list your great projects back 7 years. Well, guess what? 7 years ago, nobody was doing anything other than the big box firms that came in here and left you high and dry. And so here we are, 2019, things are starting to pick up. The district has a lot of needs that needs to be handled. And guess what? The big boxes are back. And I know other firms are coming. I hear the rumors, I talk to people, and it's coming again. And the way it's set up is history repeating itself. That's what's going to happen unless we fix the way it works.
You gotta put your foot down now. They destroyed the East Coast with it. They ran everybody out. They killed all the good engineers, the guys you're used to working with, the guys you get on the phone and talk to. How many times you call up an architect, want to talk to the engineer? He's busy, he's busy, he's busy. Over there, they couldn't even do that anymore. Pennsylvania, Detroit, Chicago.
Yeah.
Something's got to be put in place to keep. It's what we call keeping Lee County money in Lee County. That's got to stay.
I've been here long enough that I can tell you that those projects that were let out, anybody in this office or anybody in Lee County or Carter County is big enough to do those jobs.
Right.
Oh, sure.
There's no doubt.
Yeah.
I think specific to that discussion, I think what they needed to do is a lot of the local firms that did work with us through 04 and 08 when times were good. The RFQ only allows a 7-year go back for your qualifying projects. And I think for the local entities, what should be allowed is all the way back to 2004. So a lot of the local firms can report those larger value projects in their submission books.
But like what Bob's saying is the biggest point. You get I use the word out of town firms, but the larger firms in every aspect. So this RFQ and even the last one when it was done, doesn't limit. So if you're asking for, and for some reason, we're asking for dollar amounts, which today's dollar amounts are a lot different than 07, 08, 09, right? So for some reason, we're looking for dollar amounts, not for what you've done. Nobody gets a pat on the back or a point for doing anything, whether it's for the district or building exactly the same school. They put a dollar on it, and these companies are coming in, as we know, and they're listing schools from maybe some different part of the state. Could be a whole different project. The last one we put the RFQ, it was a dollar amount. You could have submitted on a condominium project. It was a dollar amount, and that's the only thing that they cared about. The question was asked in the meeting. And of course, they said, well, that'd be up to the scorers. Well, it shouldn't be up to the scorers. It should be, number one, Lee County, and number two, it should be by the, whoever's architect, contractors, engineers, it should be by the firm that's here in Lee County, not what your firm did from Miami, not what your firm did in Orlando. It's just wide open.
How does the team get selected for who grades?
The procurement division provides a selection committee. They try to find an aggregate from various departments within the school district to make up those committee members.
But having an aggregate make up those committees, how does that?
Well, it used to be.
Because of the fact that, you have people that are grading that may not have much construction knowledge.
Well, and
We have no construction.
here's
Or never build a school.
here's what I can tell you, just as an observer. Originally, there were construction and maintenance people that predominantly made up the balance of the committee members. And then there was discussions that there were people that were biased and scoring unfairly against some and more than fairly against others. So they tried to mitigate that by grabbing individuals from different district divisions to try and have some equity. And so I'm hearing that necessarily from your perspective isn't working that well either.
Well, you're hearing it from everybody, but and I know Ellis is sitting there scratching his head too, but it used to be construction and maintenance guys, the most important people. I'm sure, so if I screwed up on a project, two people are gonna know construction because I worked for them, and maintenance because guess what? They gotta maintain the building. They got booted off. And that to me is like, wow.
How powerful is this committee? You can go in there and change it?
It's not.
Or you just recommend it? I'm asking, I don't know.
I can tell you that the designers of the last high school, middle school, and elementary schools are no longer in this district. And they're they were out-of-town architects. They had some local influence, but none of those firms are here in this district.
Oh, they're all prototypes that were being from 05 or 04 on?
05, 04, 06.
South.
Like those guys, what I was saying, they just disappeared.
That's
We're
the
going
same
back
thing,
again
Robert
to-
No, you're right.
Same thing, exactly what he said. So how do we move forward and fix that though?
So
We need to come with a plan that.
Well, you also had issues back then with the RFQ process, when you had all your maintenance and your construction people that worked for the district. It was all the old, good old buddy system. If you're friends with the contractor and you worked for the district, you gave them higher scores than somebody you didn't like. That's just the way it was.
Every scoring for anybody is very subjective when they're doing it. Right. Whether it's somebody in curriculum, and they might know you, they might know somebody on the other thing. There's a lot of different programs with Lee County, and a lot of these bigger firms make sure they have people into those things. They get themselves in there, they get to know a lot of people. It's not based on what they do, man. Right. It's based on who they know. That's what it is right now.
So how is procurement responding to the letter? Are they not addressing it? Do they?
I have no idea. I just know this came to the school board.
No, I know.
So that's, and the school board, we discussed it, and I was gonna bring it back to you guys anyways, but the board even suggested it. So, I had brought this up, what you just mentioned, last year, that they were concerned over who actually is scoring. And I couldn't believe that somebody from construction wasn't on it. Now, the reason why it did change is because of what went on with Bonita High School. So that's why they took it from and put it procurement. and they thought that would solve the problem, but it really didn't. And so I think that my recommendation is that it comes from recommendation from construction advisory back to the board, because I think we really do need to look at it. But I think the start is to review the process. And you have an opinion, and I think that everyone needs to, at this table, needs to discuss it, and I think make a recommendation back. I believe that we still need somebody from some kind of construction background. My thought process was somebody from this committee be on the scoring process. But, pardon me?
I said, why would we not have that? I mean, that's what's so.
And I would suggest, maybe even taking turns or be two individuals, not just one. But that was my idea, is my thought, if we can't have construction.
Why can't the whole committee be here and make a recommendation?
Well, because it'll be in the morning time and it's set, they schedule them and everybody would have to attend. I don't.
Be there all day.
No, some people like that.
Yeah, so I don't know
They come up
that.
with three names, right, 4. Then they give you guys a day or a couple of days to look at it, review it in one of your meetings, and get back to what you recommend.
Well, and I think this is something that you need to talk about, but that was my thought process, was somebody from here should be on it. If we can't have maintenance or someone from maintenance, because they know, and that was part of they felt like people, they knew the contractors and there was that relationship. And we could have that same concept here as well, because I'm sure everyone knows a lot of people in the industry, but I think that's why you have to have more than one and to make it in. The scoring is gonna be different from each individual, and.
I think on, it's up to the superintendent's recommendation, but there is one person from this, that can attend that meeting. That's not in, that has no conflict in that meeting. So I think there is a position in that selection committee for a person in this committee to sit.
Nobody ever asked. Nobody's been
Well,
asking.
they should be asking us when they do that. I think if you look at the operating procedure, I think there is. If you look at
There was an option,
They had to have a minimum.
that may be in
There
there.
was it was one of those optional,
Right.
it wasn't.
We can't even be on this committee unless we're Lee County people and have.
Right.
So I mean, it's, and then if you're
Right.
involved with stuff up in Tallahassee, it's like if you're on the Board of Architecture and Interior Design, if they're doing a code thing for new code changes, they pick a person from that board to go sit on the other person's thing, just in case there's a Q&A. I mean, there's always a checks and balances. I mean,
Right.
I think the majority of us, I mean, I don't care speaking out of turn, but I mean, I think we're kind of upset about this. And it's like, but again, so BSSW has to write a letter, and then what's gonna happen? Because it's not, it would be if it was any of us submitting stuff.
I had another engineer contact me, and I brought this up at the board table and I got shot down, but that's why I got on here, is because I'm like, things need to change, and that the only way to do that is to give you the power. The power should be here. So I'm all about that. So that's why I think it totally, take control of that and make a recommendation, and then it goes back and the board works it.
And even if you didn't put construction, I look at Scotty, because he's part of that thing, facilities and maintenance on that board, at the least, even before the books are graded, somebody like Scotty or somebody like, if it's Jimmy Flock, whoever's running the maintenance, should at least be able to explain to each person when there's 9 firms submitting, you could say, hey, look, I've got that firm there, I mean, they finished the school 2 years ago and we've got 500 maintenance issues already. So
Right.
at least it's in their ears.
Well, wait a second, there should be a book that we did, after every construction project, there is a list of
Yeah, but they should be able
Warranty
to.
or warranty.
No, we call it, it's a grading, and we actually have 2 sheets now.
Okay.
We have a sheet for the contractor, and we also have a sheet for district staff. The questions are very similar, however, for part of our KPI, we want to show, as the vendor, meaning the end user, the school, the principal, how did the construction team do on the site, all right? And then the other one is for district staff. How did we do managing your site? And that's part of our KPIs. So
And that should be it's in the selection committee.
they have books, and usually when it sits there, it's a selection committee, it's there if people want to open it up. If you're not familiar with construction and you're from another division, you can open it up and you can look at what the scores
It's
are.
more powerful if somebody's in there explaining.
It says it right here, number 7, optional current or former board advisory committee member. It doesn't have a conflict of interest.
But how does anybody in construction, how does anybody, you know, when they, and that was always the latest talk about construction and maintenance have a conflict of interest, which, for those of you guys that know, I did Benita Springs High School, so I know all about how the scoring went. There was a lot more to it than everything that was said, but we don't need to get into that.
Right.
But a conflict of interest, not having construction people under maintenance people, there's always somebody who knows somebody who's on that board. And if you don't trust the people that are, you know, here working at the district, well, then they shouldn't be working at the district. I mean, that's the unfortunate part. It happens, but at least they can explain their scoring. It maybe shouldn't be so weighted. You know, the old days, it used to be 1, 2, or 3. That was it. It was simple. You went down your old presentation and everybody voted 1, 2, or 3. Again, could be subjective as well, but if people aren't hearing, hey, we had a real problem on that job, or boy, you know, the scheduling was bad on that project from construction, or if it's a maintenance problem, or it could be an architectural thing, you know, we have a lot of change. Whatever it is, it should come out before the next job does. And that way everybody can then go from there and make their decisions on the score.
Yeah, you always see that in the RFQ, it's a whole lot of process on what you've done and not anything at all on how well you did it.
Finding your references.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's important.
Moving on, we're just about the end of our timeline here, and we've kind of squeezed Scott out of his construction update, so can you give us the,
I'll give you the fast
version?
I'll give you the fast version. You just see a sheet up there. We've obviously begun MMM High School, so we're pushing dirt, we're getting that going. We've engaged, we're actually gonna have some involvement with FGCU's construction management program. We met with them yesterday, so they're gonna be involved with that and visiting the site from time to time, get some knowledge. Some of the, these are by my project managers, by the way. Some of the ISOC money and the capital money, we have an HVAC project at Varsity Lakes coming up. Ida Baker, we're gonna enter our phase 3 of that central energy plant that works 3 schools. Riverdale auditorium connection to the major CEP plant they did. Cape Elementary air handling unit replacement. We went out for that, we didn't have enough money, but now we have the tax referendum, so that's gonna get put out. Fort Myers High School, another phasing part of this. This is actually redoing all the chill water piping and connected into the central plant that we had. Steve, we're in the process now of designing. We're at 90% documents for MMM Middle School on Sunrise. Eventually that will be a dual site, but for right now, state has only allowed us to provide a middle school out there until we can do a spot survey for the numbers to get the approval to build an elementary. So we anticipate a construction start on there hopefully in February. Portables. Staging School, freshman class, first year, 2020, will open for MMM High School. Will open behind Lehigh Senior High School in a portable campus that we're gonna set up there. So we're already getting pricing now, we're starting that, and we'll start that construction, get that completed over the spring. Roofing projects, these just came up. We're doing a re-roof at North Fort Myers High School and one at Cypress Lake High School as well.
Hallelujah.
Okay,
Wow.
so the RFQ just went out. All right, we just had the presentation this morning for North Fort Myers.
So what about the next one? So that would be,
Cypress will be, I think she said she was gonna try and get that going for next week, the advertisement for that school.
They can do that under the 2 million.
Well, here's the deal, that's too close to 2 million, I'm not gonna risk it, that's gonna go out as an RFQ. These are rough estimates, the problem is I'm a violation of statute, if that thing goes to 2,100,000, so when we're this close, it's better to do the RFQ, then I get it done and move forward.
And that's just the main count, that's not the center, that's.
Yeah, that's everything to do with the high school.
But not the center for the arts.
Yes, everything to do with the high school. Your auditorium, the main building, the entire campus.
Wow, yeah, that's amazing.
so my
The
recommendation,
presentation was this morning?
I can only hear one at a time. Pardon?
What year would that be if it were approved?
The roofing?
when would be done?
If the RFQ process takes 4 months, if I engage within 6 months, I could have a construction team out there re-roofing those projects. We want to get the roofs going, so as soon as I can get contracts let, my GMP to the board and approved, we go. We have funding now between capital funds and ISOC money.
So can you send out the date of the RFQ process on Cypress Lake then? Because the other one was done, right? North was done. They missed that. If everybody had the date, maybe they could pop in and see that process.
I believe I can get that for you. That's not a problem, Pat. We'll just call procurement. But if you go to procurement's department website, there's a list of all RFQs, advertisements for architects, projects, when they're going out, what those dates are. So if you want to go to leeschools.net, procurement division, which is part of finance and budget, that should be there. But Pat, if we could at least send everybody the link to get to that, and then you'll see all the advertised projects that are out.
And then that would be my recommendation is if anyone can pop in and see part of the process, that would shed some light on it and to get this, if y'all want to make changes to that.
Technically, Northville ISI is not done. I believe it was the pre-submittal for the construction managers.
Correct. That whole,
He meant that, the RFQ's out.
the RFQ is out, we're in that 4-month process.
Right.
That is correct. My other project manager, Matt, who's one of our new people, we stole him from Bishop Verot. He was the director of construction projects, so I got a good pick there. Right now, covered walkways were a big issue. They vetted it out. There was many criteria in the matrix to figure out what schools needed to get canopies. Don't want to bore you that, but there were 5 picked for this fiscal year to get done. Sunshine, Bonita, Oak Hammock, J. Colin English, and Harns Marsh. And there's 2 things. 1, how long have the schools had portables without it? And 2, what schools are going to have portables in the long term remaining? So we also did traffic studies and construction. There's been a lot of issues at schools, mostly elementary schools, with cars backing up onto roadways. I've already gone out and done some studies. Now I'm going to be re-engaging with those civils to actually do drawings, and then obviously continuing contracts for physical work. Some of them have to do the study and that. So those are the 5 schools we're going to be looking at. And you can see the 3 Oaks was the woman that came to the board meeting recently. That's on there. So, we're keeping the talk. River Hall has come up recently as well with that HOA and association. Heights, Diplomat Elementary, those have been out for 3 years. We had studies, but we just didn't have funding to do them. And Tree Line Elementary is a big problem, and the city came to us, so we had a study done, and that is already moving forward. I've already got a proposal for drawings on that coming.
Are they taking into account when they do the interchange there on Colonial and 75, how much pressure that's gonna put on Tree Line?
Well, this is internal storage. I have to get the cars off of Tree Line
Okay.
and into the school campus. So what this is we go back in, we reconfigure our front site, create multiple drop-in lanes typically at most schools. So that's what this is about. I have to get our parents off of the surface roadways because it's accidents waiting to happen.
You're wrapping around the parking lot?
Art, I'll show you, it's a lot. I'm moving parking areas, I'm getting rid of staff parking, creating 2-3 lane stocking. And we're creating more canopy, which means school staff are gonna have to be paid a little earlier to get out there. Parents will let kids off if they see an adult. They won't if it's before that bell time and there's only one person out there. They all wait until they're directly across from you so that little Johnny or Susie gets in safely. So there's a bunch of things in this mix. We meet with the principals, so this is a collaboration. And the key intent is to get everybody off the streets.
That's a small site, I think that's on like 9 acres.
It's art, I got a whole detail, I'll go over it with you. It's pretty intense. Obviously, right now, we're in the middle, we've already done the RFQ process. I think this is part of what this committee's talking about with the vendors and who's winning the job and so forth. That's K and NN to be located behind Estero High School. We have not negotiated a contract with the architect yet, but we have board rankings for architect is approved, and I believe if you haven't approved, Suffolk was the #1 ranking, but I think that's coming to the board for approval. On that, I don't know that it's come to you for approval yet.
No, I think so.
It might be this next meeting you have.
And this is a question not probably above your head there, but we already got an architect designing the middle school. Why do we hire a different architect to do another?
Good point.
Yeah.
Well, good question. And
Spend the money.
Well, I can go to a kitchen.
I can tell you what I do. Right now, we hired an architect to do a middle school update and redesign of the prototype, and that is the school MN on Sunrise Boulevard and the site development. I did not do an elementary prototype there. The projects behind Estero was a dual site, meaning a middle school and an elementary. So that's the difference.
If the middle school be already designed, you pay just a redesign fee and, right? I mean, you're gonna.
But that's correct, it'd be a reuse fee. The problem is though, it would be giving someone in elementary school
Well, not
that
necessarily.
did not have a prototype.
Right.
I can't
Not
have-
necessarily though, but I'm with you.
Understood,
You didn't put it out, I understand.
understood. My personal, this is, let me take this off, this is Scott's personal recommendation.
Yeah, I know.
My life is a lot easier if I do one construction management firm and one architect on a congested site with multiple buildings.
Sure.
I get the biggest bang for my buck in work scope, concrete buy, brick buy, and everything buy. Economy of scale. That's my personal opinion. So procurement has a process, they have guidelines, they put the RFQ out, and it's my job to follow it.
Not giving anybody a pat in the back, but you could have got probably a double reuse fee because, you know, principals are the same guys that worked at the last elementary school, but.
I'd be very careful on that fee for that middle school project,
Well,
if you've already paid for it.
here, no, I haven't paid for anything. We use the state of Florida DMS curve.
Right.
You put in your construction value and it spits out based on all the state of Florida
Yeah, but
projects.
the reuse fee is half, 60% of the cost.
I don't disagree with you, Art. Unfortunately, the way the RFQ was let, I used the DMS curve for all of my architectural designs on that. If I didn't have an elementary and I was only doing a middle school on that site, then yes, we could move forward and use our current prototype design that we've engaged with to be implemented on that without an RFQ process at all.
But middle school's the same. Middle school's the same.
I understand, Art. You understand that it's not the same. One school I'm building in the middle in a site, the other school I'm building in the middle in an elementary. Two different RFQs put out.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, I can tell you, you can save tons of money going with one prototype design.
Without question.
Did you buy the prototype?
Pardon me?
Did you buy the prototype?
From the current MM designer, yes, we bought the prototype design.
Okay, so then the architect that you hired should take that prototype and drop it on the site for any building, any code issues, but pretty much it's been scrubbed already. So that fee for that middle school better be, I understand the elementary school, you have to revisit that, but
And middle school,
shouldn't be any different than the one you're building out in Lehigh right now.
Right.
Except for, switching north, south, east to west.
You are correct, and once I have 100%, 100% construction documents for the prototype middle school, I do have the ability to provide those documents to the other. But I don't know what that fee is in the contract for us to reuse that.
And Scotty's not negotiating, Scotty's not involved with the fees, right? That's procurement.
No, I'm part of the negotiation team, but again, everything gets negotiated using the state of Florida DMS curve. And what you're speaking to is an existing contract that has a reuse fee. I've got two separate RFQs. I've got an RFQ for a middle, and I've got an RFQ for a middle and an
Don't pay
elementary.
twice for that middle school.
Pardon?
It's your school, don't pay twice for that middle school. Make sure it's a reuse. I don't care who does it, whether it's the original architect or a new architect, that's your school.
But here's what I can tell you. I do not, although it is a reuse, and I own reuse from this current architect right here, okay?
Right?
I don't own the drawings per se. There are drawings, but I don't own them.
Yes, you do.
I would
You
have.
own the copyrights to those
I
drawings.
do. But to give all of the CAD backgrounds to another architect without paying a reuse fee to this guy doesn't happen.
Then you originally.
The reuse fee goes to this
You went the
architect.
wrong, now but you're paying twice on this side, and this side you're saying, well, I can't reuse his drawings, because I gotta pay him. So that to me is paying twice
Yeah, they
over
redid the
here.
middle school under RSNH, and they took it from BRPA, and they got a, I don't know what the fee was.
I'm just saying, just be careful with,
It was that project, it was that prototype.
just be careful what what your committee decides on fees, because that's gonna be looked at real closely.
And I would assume it would, and I knew that this discussion would come at some point in time.
Again, Scott, the terms, yeah, we'll give you everything you want for MM, and what you decide to do with it is the business.
That's correct. Now, whether that particular firm still wants to move forward at that reduced value,
It might be crooked, but
They better,
I can't speak to
They
that.
probably don't work.
They don't, I will. Hold their feet to the fire.
We could
That
just,
school's
get
already
rid of
done.
procurement
They don't have to do
altogether
anything.
and just get.
We voted on that.
That could be our recommendation.
The elementary school, you can do what you know, you have to redesign that or a new code, because you haven't had an architect, but you got an architect for the.
All right, let's not beat them up anymore.
No, it's not beaten up. I knew this day would come and this discussion would come.
And it's healthy.
And it needs to happen from here, this is where it should happen. And if you're, because otherwise, right, because if you're not having this conversation, then we need to.
I'm talking at the taxpayer in Lee County.
Yeah.
Forget about Lee County School District. I already paid taxes for it. I'm not paying twice for a school.
I can tell you, it's probably a savings of somewhere around $600,000.
Absolutely, absolutely.
No, we're just gonna have our.
All right, we have hit the bottom of our construction update.
So anyway, that's what I'm doing, busy as can be.
Sorry about that. Scott, I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to be
We'll find out the parking lot
sorry.
later.
We're all professionals, and I knew this conversation was gonna come. I've had it with my own staff in the office, the exact same conversation.
Can I get anything else for last call for good of the order? Otherwise, I'll look for a motion for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
I got a motion from Darren,
Okay,
second from
that's
Jackie.
I like second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. We will see you the first Wednesday of November.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
You will have to hand in my plaque.
Feel part of the scene there.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
You know, I was
Were you here for that? Active?